Again, my name is Lance Abbott. I'm a staff trainer here at Mental Health. And if you notice my arm shaking, I have Parkinson's in my left arm. So bear with me. This is my friend Annie. She's going to be our consumer today in our wheelchair. And we're going to be covering the basics of using the vans. And we're also going to be covering two different types of vans. Over here on my left is our high top vans, and they have an electrical hydraulic lift. And then over here we have our newer caravans with a manual ramp. And the tie-down system that we use is the same on both. They may look a little different, the lockdowns in the floor, but they're the same system. And that system is called a Q-straint tie-down system. And the reason we've switched to that is because the belts stay clean and they actually get tighter with vibration. If you're driving down a country washboard road and before the belts might loosen up, now they'll tighten up. So they're actually safer as you drive. So we're going to go over and show you how to log into the van. Okay, in this section we're going over how to use the actual van. There should be a book, a binder to log into. Whenever you pick up a van, you're going to log into it. So look for the binder first. The other thing you're going to want to make sure is that you have your orange emergency box. Like I said, every van has a box. Every van has a binder. In this binder, there's going to be a pouch. And in the pouch is going to be the Fuelman card. And a handicap sticker. This card, Fuelman card, is what allows you to get gas and pay for things like windshield fluid. So before you go anywhere, find the Fuelman card and the handicap sticker. Of course, you're going to use that for parking later. They should both be in this pouch. You may find fuel receipts in here. They should be turned in whenever possible to the bins by the van sign-out kiosk. In here is a van sign-out sheet. At the top should be written down the name of the vehicle, what office or house they're assigned to, and the license plate number. And then over here, the month and year. You're going to put the date in, your initials, your furthest destination. If you're going to Rogers City, you put Rogers City. If you're going to Hillman, you put Hillman. If you're going to Lansing, you put Lansing, and so on. Put in your program code. Your supervisor will tell you what that is. Put in your beginning odometer from the actual odometer, not from what the last person said, actually what the odometer says on the vehicle, because some people forget to do this, and if there's a maintenance problem or an accident with the vehicle that wasn't reported, then you may be responsible. So make sure you get the odometer off your odometer. If there's missing mileage, just leave a blank and note it. But put your beginning odometer in, and when you're done, all done with the vehicle, and you're parking it for the night, put in your final mileage. If you get gas, you're going to put in, I think there's an illustration here, you're going to put the gallons in and the odometer reading that you got the gas at. As you can see, these sheets haven't been turned in, but again, you can turn these in whenever possible at the kiosk. There are instructions for how to sign out the van, how to pick up a van, how to return a van, how to fuel a van. The important thing to note is before you drive anywhere, walk around the van. If you see damage to the bodywork or the any problems, make sure you make a note of it and report it, because otherwise the person before may not have turned it in, the maintenance in, and then they'll be coming after you. So for your own protection, do a walk around the vehicle, make sure it's in good order before you take it. There's an emergency plan for the vehicle if you have an accident, if there's flat tires, stuff like that. You can read that. It's a good review. Here's an important page, towing. You may be out in the winter and slip into a snowbank and get stuck, and you may need a tow. Mental Health has towing set up for all 4 counties already. The numbers are in here. All you need to do is call them and they'll come out and the bill will go to Mental Health. So it's already set up, very useful. Also in this book is an accident report, a blank one of course. If you need it, fill it out. Make sure you note the dates and times, the full names of people involved, any witnesses, etc. You can fill that out and put later on you can replace it with a new one, a new blank for the next person, but if you need it, it's there to use. If you go out of town and you're going to be on a long trip somewhere and you're going to need to get gas on the trip, you're going to need to know where the gas stations are. These pages are by city alphabetically, so say you need to go to Lansing. And when they sent me to Lansing when I first started, they didn't tell me anything about gas cards. So I was running out of gas, wondering what to do. And all I needed to do was look up in this book where the different stations are that have fuel man. And you can Google map these nowadays on your phone and find them so you can fit it into your trip. You know, what gas station is most convenient for you. Very useful. So that's the book. Make sure you log in and out. And make sure that the fuel man card and the handicap sticker go back in the pouch for the next person. If these are not here, look around on the dash, see if you can find them. But if they're not there, it makes using this van very difficult, and it should be reported. Okay, one more thing. For the high top, you're going to have to start the van and put the emergency brake on. So what the emergency brake does down here, and this is the release, but you put it on, it's a safety feature for the lift. If the van doesn't have the emergency brake on, the lift doesn't work. So that's just one tip. Second tip is, if it's summer, make sure the AC is on. If it's winter, make sure your heat is on. That's just for your health benefit. And you want to keep your consumers in the wheelchair cool and in the summer and warm in the winter. So make sure it's on in the back. Okay, one thing, you're going to want to hit the power locks to unlock all the doors. People often ask what these are and what these are for. These doors are pretty big, and in a heavy wind they'll blow open. So these, when you push them in all the way, there's a friction lock that keeps the doors from closing. What used to happen before we put those on is these lifts start coming down, the door would blow closed partially, and the lift would rip the door open. So this saves some wear and tear on the doors. So this is our lift van, our high top van. When these are parked, you want to park on a level surface. When you're operating the lift, you want to have the parking brake on There's also a switch down here, an on-off switch. When you're first picking it up, you're going to want to turn that on. When you're parking it for the night, make sure you turn it off. These have LED lights. However, if you don't turn that switch off, it can drain the battery overnight if the lights get left on. So maintenance doesn't like that. So they don't like coming out to charge batteries or replace batteries. So when you're done, make sure that is off, and you can tell because then the lights go off. Before I get in the actual part of the lift, you're going to want to make sure you find a red strap. And I'll show you what that's used for in a minute. We've got power on, so this is unfolding. Now I'm going to fold it back up. If you hit the unfold button and it doesn't come down, try the fold button and push it in a little bit more, and then it should unfold. As the lifts get older, they don't work as well. You may need to make sure they go all the way in. You may need to push them in with your hand a little bit, and then they start working. And then we'll drop this down. You can see areas marked in yellow. Those are pressure sensitive. If there's a wheelchair on here and a person pushes on this, it'll stop the lift. Same on this tailgate section. If they push backwards on this while it's coming down, it'll stop the lift. There's a pressure plate underneath here. When it hits the ground, it lowers that. If this doesn't come down, a lot of times you can push on it and it'll flop down. Just step on it. So there are things here for the control box. I often just drape it over that so it's handy. You're probably, that happens a lot with these red straps. Make sure these don't get caught under your lift while you're lowering your lift. So this is our red strap. All these do are loop over the handles. They're designed to go around behind the back of a wheelchair and then loop over the other one. They don't have a click latch or anything, they're just a safety belt. And the reason we have these is that when the lift is up here, it prevents somebody from kicking and pushing their wheelchair over the edge of this. Now, if the wheelchair is way up here and you didn't have this going behind the wheelchair, you can see they're going to have a pretty big fall. So this is a safety thing. Make sure you find this. If you don't find this strap, I would not recommend using the van. There's been some pretty serious falls, so that's why we have it. This strap is mandatory too to use it, so you're well in your rights to refuse to go somewhere without it. If you don't find it, contact your home supervisor or the maintenance supervisor and they'll get one to you right away. So, a lot of people leave these on here all the time. You just have to be careful they don't get caught in the machinery. I'm going to bring our volunteer consumer over. So when you put a wheelchair on this, you don't want their feet pushing against the front, and you don't want the wheels pushing against the back lift. You want them right in the middle somewhere, and you want to put the wheelchair brakes on. Now, I'm going to raise this up just a little bit. What I wanted to show you was, if this wheelchair is pushing against that, there's pressure on this, it's not going to come up. And if the wheelchair is too far forward and their feet are pushing on this, it's not coming up. So right in the middle somewhere. Okay. So once you have the brakes on the wheelchair, you're going to put the red strap on. It simply goes underneath the handlebars behind the chair, gets looped on. So that's there for safety. One of the other things is, talk with your person if you can, calm, tone of voice, use your gentle teaching skills, and I also reassure them by keeping my hand on the wheelchair. The brakes on wheelchairs are known to fail, usually at the worst times, so just by keeping a hand on it and talking to them, you're keeping them calm. And this lift does jerk a little bit when you first start it, so that also helps them calm down. So you're going to hit the up button, raise them up. You're going to get to a point where this front will drop down and you can roll them in the van. So you don't need to take this off, just leave it. You are going to take their brakes off on both sides, and then grab the wheels and slowly pull them part way in, and then put the brakes back on. The reason I am only taking them part way in is for safety. You don't want to just shove them in and let them roll, because they may hit the tie downs in the floor or something and they may get tipped over. At the same time, you want to keep them a little bit out of the weather if you can, so they're a little bit protected from snow or rain. The rule is only one person on the lift at a time, so staff has to go around the side. So by entering the side, it's also safer for the staff. So I'm going to go around through the side, and then I'm going to bring the wheelchair in by pulling it in the rest of the way safely and slowly. So I'm going to take the brakes off, both sides. I'm going to slowly pull it in. And you're going to want to put the wheelchair, like there are racks in the floor in the front and back. You're going to want to be about halfway between them. Put the brakes back on. And now we're ready to do the actual tie downs. These are Q-straight tie downs. There's a red lever here. You push that down, the belts come out, and then they retract on a ratchet system. which is what helps them get tighter. If they're loose, you may hear some clicking as they get tighter. That's a good thing. By the belts retracting into this housing, they stay clean, which is a nice feature. One of the problems we used to have with the other system of the old clamp down tie down system is the belts would get dirty, the belts would get glazed, and they would slip. And instead of these will tighten up, the old system would slip, and then you'd have problems keeping your wheelchair secured. So these things are quite heavy. I'm guessing over 5 pounds. And if they get thrown around in an accident, they're going to hurt someone. So we always want to keep these secured in the floor. Whether they're in use or not, they should be secured in the floor. This one is secured in the floor, and that's fine. This one is loose. That's the way I found it. That's a big safety issue. If you find them like this, you have to report it. I think you have to report it with an incident report. You can check with your supervisor on that, but it's a big safety problem. And I don't like filling out incident reports myself, but that's, if people leave these out, then they're endangering lives, so I think that's why they're going that route, incident reports. So I'm going to show you how to put these in the floor safely. Put your thumb on that nut there, and there's part of this lifts up. You can use your fingers to lift it up. There are racks in the floor here, and they're often dirty. You may need to do a finger sweep to get gravel out of the way. A lot of the homes have little brooms for the racks to keep them clean. But you drop it in there and slide it until you hear it click. When it clicks, it's secured. You can see I'm pulling on that, it's not popping out. If you don't hear it click, it can come out. So here, listen for the click. Once you get it in, you have to have this up to drop it in. Let go, slide it, and it'll click in. Okay. There's not a lot of room in some of these vans. The high tops have more room than most. And a lot of times when they're already in the floor, what you can do is lift this up and slide it. You can slide it to where you need it. This one we don't need, so I'm just gonna make sure it's clicked in somewhere out of the way. So here's another tip. These are going to go to the back corners of the seat, to the frame. Always to the frame where it's welded, not to the armrest or not to the axle, but to the frame where it's welded. And you're going to position these so that they're straight, pretty much straight, but you don't want them in the way of the wheel. So when you put these in, if you put them in this way, then they can turn out of the way of the wheel. If you put them in this way, you can turn it so that it goes to where you need to, but then this part is in the way of the wheel and it blocks the wheel from rolling when you take the person out. So when you want it like this on each side, you want it positioned like that so that you got clearance for your wheels. So little things do matter. I'm going to get that locked in, give it a shake test, turn it. I'm going to put this one in the floor. Give it a shake test. turn it so it's out of the way of the wheels. And then I'm going to hit the red lever, pull this out all the way. I'm going to grab it so I can work with it. If you don't grab it, it pulls it back in. And then if you can't get it the first time, then you have to pull it out again. So I recommend grabbing it, finding the frame where you're hooking onto, and then let it retract. So you can hit this with your finger. If you're standing up, you can hit it with your foot, that red lever. But release it all the way, grab it. That retracting noise you heard was the belt going back in. So that's how the back hook on. If this is twisted once, that's fine. You don't want it twisted multiple times. You want to keep it like this, straight as possible, just so it does its job better. So that's the back tie downs. Now we're going to shift and do the front. Now we're going to do the front tie downs. Same Q strain. We're going to put our thumb on the bolt, lift up on these, drop it in the rack. You can see this rack is very dirty and needs to be vacuumed out or brushed out, but in emergency, just do a finger sweep so that you can drop that in. You're not always going to have a broom or a shop vac handy, so fingers will do the job. You want to give it a shake test, make sure it's locked into the floor. Now, for the front tie downs, the further out you can get them, the better, so you may need to slide that out and lock it into position. The reason we want it out a ways is so that when we come out, grab hold of the belt. We still want to go to the frame, but the goal with the front tie downs is stability. These, by being angled backward and to the side, they keep this from tipping. The back tie downs take the weight. The front tie downs provided stability. What happened to me was with the old system, one of them slipped and my person tipped over into the glass on the window going around the curve. Very upsetting for the consumer and for me. And with this system, if you do it right, it's not going to happen. It's better to have it angled more. It provides more stability. If you have to, if you have two wheelchairs, you can have this on the inside angled this way. And there are drawings, technical drawings of where the belts can and cannot go. And you should be able to get a copy of that from your supervisor. A lot of the vans have those drawings right in the logbook too, in the back. But you want to secure it to the frame. What you don't want to do is you don't want to do this. And some of you may ask, well, what's wrong with that? Or what's wrong with like going to here? Seems simple, seems like it's the same thing, but it's not. You have to go, even if it's hard to get to, make sure you go to the welded frame. The handrest is only held in by this little button, and it's not enough. In an accident, it'll pop off, and then you're tied up. And these pop off too, so they're not really safe to use. You want to go to the welded frame. On this wheelchair, it's a little difficult to get to. Most wheelchairs, it's easier. But make sure you go to the welded frame. And all four of these tie downs, front and back, are right underneath the corners of the seat. So the other side is the same way. And as you can see, I've already got that on, and it's as far out as I can get it. So now that's going to keep it from, this one keeps it from tipping that way, and the other one keeps it from tipping this way. One thing I wanted to show this is again something you don't want to see. Don't want to find these lying around on the floor. So if you do find them, just clip them in safely to the floor somewhere. Make sure they're in there. They're not going to hurt anything you're doing. You can see there's another one already in the floor there. Just give them a quick shake test. A lot of times you'll find these are just left in floor ready for the next time, and that's fine. I highly recommend you always give them a shake test, because everything with tie downs depends on these being in the floor. If they pop out of the floor, nothing else is going to matter. It's very important as a first step that all 4 of these tie downs are secured to the floor, and then you secure the wheelchair with the tie downs, and then the wheelchair is secured. So once you get all 4 of these tie downs on, we're going to do a shake test. And this is not to scare your consumer, so you might want to tell them that you're giving them a shake. But this tightens up the belts. You just go back and forth a little bit until it's ratcheted down tight. The reason this is important is that the tighter it is before you put the safety belts on, the snugger the safety belts are. So that brings us to our last step with tie downs, is safety belts and shoulder harness. And on this high top, the shoulder harness is part of a van. A lot of times they will have these, and you'll have to clip them in, the shoulder harness in, whichever side you're going to use. You can see there's one on each side, so you could get 2 wheelchairs back here on either side. So it's up to you which one you use. So what we're going to do right now is make sure we have our seat belt. And this was left on this one, which is fine. I don't like to find these loose on the floor because they get dirty. Then they get your consumer's clothes dirty. So I try to keep them, if you're not in use, a lot of times there's a box or something to fold these up in and store them. But make sure you have both sides. What I do typically is click them together. If I'm going to use this as the shoulder harness, there's a pin that this will go in, okay? So if I'm going to use this belt, I want the pin on this side so that when I release it, it just drops, the whole thing comes off. If you forget, you're only going to forget once, because what will happen is you'll hit the release and the person is still tied up. So by putting the belt together and then testing it like this, you know that this goes on this side and this belt is going to go over here. So the first step is to take this seat belt part, and there are pins on all the Q strains, and I don't know if you heard it, but it clicks in. Once it's clicked in good, you can slide it between the arm of the chair if possible. And just as a word of warning, most consumers are not as cooperative, and they'll pull your hair, they'll pull your glasses. They may. Depends on their mood, like anyone, but they may not be super cooperative, and you have to be careful of your own safety. So you're going to be working in close proximity. Just be aware of what's going on. So this one is going to go over here like that. Now, if for some reason, if for some reason you can't get this belt through here. You can go through the arm of the chair under the armrest. There's usually an opening. You can go through like that. And the rule is keep it as close to the body as you can. What you don't want to do is have your belt go around like this. That's not going to help the person at all. It's going to slip off and be loose. Ideally, as an ideal, you keep it as close to the body as you can. If you can get between the armrest and the person, that's the best. On the other side, with the red switch, we have this. We're going to go on the back tie down and click that in. You know, make sure it's good. Now you can go through the armrest on this side too. Say there's a board on the back of the chair, you may need to do that. Please don't go around the wheel. Just try to keep it as close to the person's body as you can. The best way is right in between there. So you want this pin, well, how would you do it? Would you put it in the middle, put it over here, put the pin over here? Remember, this is the shoulder harness is going to attach to this. Shoulder harnesses work by going across the shoulder and down. So you're going to want this pin, you want to position it right in front of the hip bone. Not on the hip bone, not way on the belly button, but right in front of the hip bone. So you're going to want it right about there. So this belt on this side you need to tighten up. So there, you can tighten it up by pulling on the strap until it's snug, about like that. And then you can simply snug this side up like that. You don't want it too tight. You want to be able to get a finger in there. You don't want them to lose their lunch. So once the belt is snugged up, then you can secure the shoulder harness. You may need to loosen this up. This snaps over the pin, and you're going to want to make sure it clicks in. And usually you can hear it. Sometimes it's hard to hear, but that clicked in. So this is going to go over their shoulder. You're going to snug this up. Now, this isn't attached right, but one of the problems you're going to have in the summer if you have the windows down is this belt may flap around in their face. So the way to avoid that, the belts have these plastic straps, and usually this is already done, but usually you find them way up here and the belt's flopping around. What the idea is, you just slide this down and then the belt doesn't flop around on the person. So again, our person is kind of slouched down right at the moment, but the idea is that this is doing its job by going across. And then, where's that red belt? Then when you make a stop, all you have to do, if you've done this right, you've got this a little farther back, but you just hit the red lever, and then you can just take this off. Now, you may need to loosen it up a little bit, but that's easily done. So the idea is you can get this off the person, slide it back out all together, and drop it off to the side. This one you may need to, on this side, you may need to loosen the strap up from behind so that you have some slack to work with. But then this one can pull out and drop in the middle. Then you can unhook your tie downs, which we'll do in a minute. But then you can make your stop at Dairy Queen or wherever and they'll be happy. So to take these off, you need to hit the red lever, and that's all you need to do. Now, I'm not going to reach way down there. I'm just going to use my shoe, hit the red lever, and that's done. So as I was saying, don't trust your brakes. You can see the brakes slipped on this one side. I'm going to hit the red lever. I'm going to pull it out, grab it so I can work with this back tie down, take it off, let that retract. I'm going to push all the belts out of the way in the middle. Now this one on this side, this tire is going to run over this, but that's fine. You're just making a stop. You don't want to take everything apart because you're going to have to come back in. So you take your brakes off, slowly move the person out onto the lift. Get them so they're part way out. The reason I don't push them all the way out is I'm trying to protect my back as well. If I pushed them way out, I'd probably be overextending my back. So this gets them part way out, and I'm going to make sure that this is on. So I'm going to come around out here. And ideally you probably get this brake first, then go to the other side, but the idea is you slowly wheel. You can use these hand things on the side, get them where they need to be, put the brakes back on. Just don't trust the brakes, you know, that's why I keep my hand on the wheelchair so it doesn't roll. And we're going to go down. So if you parked on a level surface, you won't have too much trouble with this. Like if there's a pothole underneath that and you did park on a level surface and this doesn't flop down because of a pothole, you can just step on it, release it, push it down. At least you can get your person out of the lift. So I'm just going to set this here. I'm going to remove this because we're taking the person off the lift. Take the brakes off, get the person off the lift. So one of the things I wanted to point out is you need room for the lift behind the van, and you need room to get the person off the lift, on and off the lift. So you've got almost a van length of space you're going to need. So keep that in mind when you're parking. If you park at one of the grocery stores and they have a place designated for vans like this where you can just pull in and there's space to unload and stuff, that's great because then you can just pull out. If you're further out in the parking lot, you could take up, you know, 2 spaces, pull part way in the middle, and then you have room to get your person off behind the van. I've done that too. The idea is when you're driving these big vans is park in such a way as you can just pull out when you're done. Personally, I hate backing these vans up. That's when accidents usually happen. It's not always easy to see behind these vans. This van does not have it. A lot of them have backup cameras up there so you can see, and they have a screen in the front. That's great. And they shut off while you're driving, so you only see it when you're going in reverse. That's great for backing out of places if you have it. But you still need to park on a level surface and give yourself room to work. Okay, the weather doesn't always cooperate. Say it's snowing or raining. What happened to me is the raining, I'm lowering the person in my wheelchair on the lift, and the lift shorted out. So to simulate that, I'm just gonna shut this power switch off. So say you have no more control with this, so just set that aside. You can still help your consumer out. There's a bar on the front and some clips, and if you don't see this bar with the yellow handle, there may be a cover over this that has a wing nut on. Unscrew that, it should be on the inside of that cover. So obviously the yellow end is your handle. The other end has a notch in it. And what this is designed to do is there's a circle here that has a pin through it. You fit that notched end of the handle over it, and when you turn it, it's going to lower the lift. It's only going to lower it slowly. By turning it, you're opening that valve and allowing it to drop down. Then you're going to want to close that. Make sure you close it. And if you need to later on get the person back in the wheelchair, you can do that too by make sure the valve's closed, but then you can just manually pump up the lift, and it will raise the person up, the chair back up to the point where you can get them into the van. It's a time-consuming process, and if this happens, what I did was I got the person, I lowered them down, I got them off, we went to do our activity, and I made a phone call on my cell phone to the home, and they brought a different van over for me to use. So by the time the activity was done, I could put them on a van that worked, and they drove the other one back. But if you're out in the country all on your own and your lift breaks down, you can still use the lift, and I wouldn't recommend doing more activities because the lift doesn't work, but you can get them home safely and unload and then have the van worked on. So all the things we have covered, you'll be tested on with a hands-on test to make sure you know how to do this stuff. The tie-down system is very similar to the one in the ramp van. The ramp van is much tighter quarters than this. Some of these high tops have this seat taken out, and they have a double row of racks. You can put 4 wheelchairs in some of the high tops, side by side, and it's a little different. I'm not going to go into the details here. If you work at a home that does that, they will show you how they do it on a regular basis. So we're going to take a break from this and switch over to the ramp van.